call the meeting of ODC Development Corporation to order. Chris, would you lead us in the invitation, please?
Sure. Bow your heads. Demonstration, Father. Father God, we come to you once again. Just want to say thank you. Thank you, Father, for your darling Son, Jesus. Father God, we come to you today as we prepare to meet that. Just asking, Father, that you would give us guidance, Father God. We ask that we have good discussions, Father God. That we make all decisions that were in the best interest of Odessa, the city of Odessa, and Father God, for the future of Odessa. Father God, I ask you continue to lead us and guide us. Father God, as we finish this meeting and we part ways, I ask that you keep us all safe. These prayers we ask in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Chris, got a couple of notes and the minutes. One question, I guess, and one note. On page...
Norma was called out of the meeting, so you could just take 1 minute. Mic is not working.
You're okay. Sorry.
She's playing hooky. Norma, there's on page 2 of the minutes, the second paragraph starts out, Mr. Van Amberg reported on the August activities. The third line down there says the Facebook was down with Permian Fuels America. What are we trying to say there? I don't remember. Maybe Craig.
Probably the number of hits or the number of views, Facebook views were down.
Okay.
The number of
compressions.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you'd add that word to that, that would kind of clarify that for a non-technical guy like me. And then on page 3, the second paragraph, it says Mr. Crow. With Mr. Crow casing the nay vote, that should be casting the nay vote. Anybody else have any comments on the minutes or questions or concerns? I would entertain a motion as amended.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve it. Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as corrected. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Contractors reports, Tom or Tracy?
And still I can say I have more hair.
A lot more.
Tom is in Chicago this week with the Team Texas Roadshow. This is the Team Texas group puts this on about 2 or 3 times a year, and it's just a small group of economic development professionals that meet, and they have scheduled meetings already set up for people that are potentially looking to expand or relocate into the Texas area. So that's what he's doing this week. We are still waiting on the economic development agreement from Project CTV, but that should be coming within the next couple of weeks from what we were told. And we should have expect a really great news coming from them next month, and it could maybe or may not be a groundbreaking, but we will see. We've recently attended ECISD's board meeting with representatives from Project Legion, where there are 313 applications were approved for the 6 potential direct air capture builds that they are considering for the Pinwell site. Of course, this project could potentially generate over $24 billion and 2,800 FTEs. Project Lithium will be in Odessa for a site visit the week of November 7th. That is the EV battery manufacturing facility that is also looking to site in the Pinwell area. That is a $1 billion capex and could create potentially 1,000 full-time jobs. Project Frost continues to work with the local taxing entities on getting their 312 agreements in place for their $350 million capital expansion that they are doing at their current facility. Compliance Committee just recently met to review 3 projects for potential grants. One of those is further down on the agenda that we will be discussing here in a bit. And the other 2 were asked for additional information, and we're still waiting on them to supply that information so we can take it back to compliance. We're also working with 4 other expansion projects trying to get their application information gathered so we can take those to the compliance committee for vetting also. Kathy has completed updating the major employers list recently and is working on gathering data to update our apartment survey that we do every other year. And Lindsay continues to input data on the EDOIQ database that we recently purchased and learning how to generate reports and things like that on it. And she's has included a marketing report in your packet for the social media hits and things that we had this in August. This is still from the August report. So if there are any questions, that's our report for today.
When will the syrup be back in town?
Looks like they're here today. We have reps out in the audience today.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Craig, CPA.
Good afternoon. Winding down the tail end of the fiscal year for ODC at the end of September. Just want to let you know that our broadcast packages on golf, which were on CBS and NBC, have now come to fruition, and those are over with. We don't have any trade publications scheduled coming up, but Tom is at the conference, and we may have some things when he comes back from that. Our billboards and also our newspaper ads are continuing only on a month-by-month basis until through the end of December. And just a real quick note, did a reconciliation at the end of the fiscal year, and we were underspent on budget by almost $250,000, $230,000. So I know you're glad to hear that. Permian Fuels America, we were up significantly in all social media across the board, but Facebook, I'm sorry, the website was down because we had this really significant spike last month, and it's tapered back down following that. So.
The Facebook was down. Was that what was in the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
The website was, the hits were down, and that wasn't down itself, right?
No. Again, I'm sorry. Yes, Tim, that's correct. It did not go down. We would know that for sure.
Their Facebook site was down.
But I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you might have.
Any questions for Craig? Craig, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chris with the Black Chamber.
Good afternoon to everybody. Hope everyone's having an absolutely great day. And for lack of just taking up all of your time, we're glad to say that our activity as far as our social media and our websites are up. And I think this interest is pretty much because we're in the process of our 32nd annual Ebony Bar Awards, which will be November the 5th. And a lot of the attention that we're receiving on our websites and our Facebook accounts, our calls to the office, pretty much are in question for the Ebony Bar Awards. And Saturday, the 15th, we're in the process of doing our third. We try to have 3 networking breakfasts. We will have information on, since this is Breast Cancer Month, this is a month that's kind of, really that's kind of close to my heart because of some family members, and we're going to have information pertaining to that. We have a company in that will be giving information on Medicaid and Medicare, so we're going to make sure that we cover all aspects during our networking breakfast. We are to the point tomorrow at St. James Baptist Church. We will assist in the food ministry, which we will hand out food boxes to needy families. I'm glad that we can do it, but I hate that we have to. That shows that there's still a need here in Odessa, and we've seen our numbers increase quite a bit in our last 3 giveaways on our with our box ministry. We're in the process of sitting down with some other companies to consolidate some different projects to do some outreach so that we can get some of our young people off the couch and back to work. We got a lot of our companies that are in need of help, and we did some soul searching and some communicating to see if we possibly could work together to help do an outreach program to get some of these young people back to work. We have a couple of companies that has approached us. They are really ambitious. One company is bringing something very unique to the area. They are going to have a type of food that is new to this area, and they also want to open a boutique. So this is just some of the activity that we have going on here, there at the Black Chamber. So we're really seeing an increase in most of all of our activities, which is good. So make sure it keeps me busy. So I'm retired, so I can handle it. Any questions?
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned about younger members of our labor force going back to work. Have you gotten any preliminary information of any particular reason why some of those folks have not been inclined to seek some of the jobs that are available?
I'm looking for the politically correct word to say and not use lazy. Because after our covert, pretty much, it was some of the companies that I have sat down and talked to. They are pretty much in the neighborhood of, they have jobs that are in the $28 to $40 range. Years ago, for an opportunity like this, you would work all day on something like
Right.
this. Now it's to the point that that's not what I'm looking for. So we're doing some outreach, and we've talked to some people and trying to see what the temperature is and to see what is the reason, and that's what we're trying to find out.
Well, when you get some kind of material results from that, would you please present that? Yeah, if you could
I'd be glad to, because this was something that that was brought to my attention, and we just kind of took and ran with it. So we will stockpile information and try to log this information so that we can track it.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I do. I have a question, Chris. So, what month are we in? October. So I guess over the last 10 months, you have talked about businesses that you've talked to.
Right.
Is there any particular reason that you can put your finger on why some of these businesses it hasn't happened for them?
Funding.
It's all funding?
They don't have the finances. They're in the process. And I know that 2 of these 3, I turned them over to Tyler with the SBDC. One of the gentlemen, the one that is in the process of establishing his food truck, he has gone through the process. He is to the point now that he's to the financing stage. But he had to, he came to us, he was pretty much clueless of where he needed to start. He now has his tax ID number, doing business as. So all of his, he has a business proposal. Everything he's pretty much got all of his ducks in a row. Now he's looking for finance. This is pretty much, Chris, I would say that out of the companies that we have talked to, pretty much, even our Barber College that is in the process, because they have outgrown their current location, they just need funding because they can't afford to go to a bigger facility.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyler? Tyler looks different.
Tyler does look different.
That looks pretty.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathleen McNeil. I'm the business consultant for working with Tyler at the SBDC. Tyler is currently at the university having to do a speaking engagement there, so he said he will return next month. Going through the numbers of everything that we've had for the past year, as we've just started a new fiscal year, the numbers may look like they've decreased, and they have a little bit decreased since what we had at the end of the year last year, the year before, in 2021. But the reason for that is because this year we didn't account for disaster funding. And we had no additional clients that came in for disaster funding because those all got shifted to the other offices that still had a CARES consultant that they were specifically paying for. But we did notice that looking at our numbers in comparison to past numbers, we have actually increased in a lot of our areas. For counseling last month, we had 251 sessions with 224 hours. We presented 4 seminars. We had a QuickBooks seminar, which went over really well. Funding opportunities, how to write a business plan narrative. And then we worked with partner here, the Permian Basin Black Chamber, to present and host these SWOT analysis. Grand total, we had about 118 total people attend the trainings. We had 4 new businesses in a number of different areas. So industry-wise, one was a pool cleaning and chemical company. One was a commercial painting. One was digital marketing, and one that was here in Odessa that was started was a security consulting firm. There were a total of 24.5 FTEs, with 11.5 of them here in the city of Odessa. And then for capitalization, we had about $700,802 for the entire area that we cover, but $280,820 for the city of Odessa. And let's see, we have we had 3 training classes scheduled for the month of October. On the 4th, we presented creating a business plan. On the 6th, we creating a budget. And then today was a fraud prevention, which was also co-hosted by the Permian Basin Black Chamber. And for our current month for the last 30 days, we have kind of hit a high we've received 69 new clients.
Cool.
Any questions?
I have one. The 4 seminars presented, I mean, you hit attendees an all-time high, I guess, of 118. Which one of those was the most popular?
The QuickBooks.
Okay.
We had somebody come in that specializes in that. So they did a full 3-hour class on QuickBooks, and we found that that was the one that had the most people sign up for.
Perfect. Great.
Any other?
What does the SBDC do? What do y'all do to put people with financing opportunities? We heard Chris say that these fledgling businesses are having a hard time getting funded.
Getting funding. I do know that right now the banks are having a bit of an issue with not wanting to fund. It's just a harder time to get a loan. But usually our process is, for instance, if he sends us a client, we work with them. We help them create their business, set up their EIN, and then we walk them through and go through their business plan so that they're ready to be able to go to a bank and take it over there. Then we kind of let them know that we give them a list of SBA preferred lenders. So so that if they're going to be looking for an SBA loan, they're able to, you know, kind of find the ones that would definitely work with and want to work with and do an SBA loan. And so we kind of just go from there. We are not able to specifically recommend to them because we're not allowed to do that. But that's why we give them a list, and we just kind of let them know to kind of shop around ahead of time and check with banks, because every bank will do something different. There are some banks that would prefer more on the medical side, the healthcare, and there are some that absolutely will not touch an oil field company. They want nothing to do with the oil field. And I know that there are some that don't want restaurants, and then there's others that do want them. So a person would really have to kind of shop around for that. And then, of course, if all else fails and they don't get accepted through any of those, then you have the backup for like People Fund, which has some really good deals, but I believe, if I remember correctly, they require that whoever it is going in for the loan has been not approved for a traditional bank loan.
So y'all do point them in various avenues, grants, some private, public type of deal, banks, SB, okay.
As we can, we try to help them look online as well for different grants.
Is most of the requests for financing you see, is it for equipment more so than
More
property?
so, yes.
And then
A lot of it is
working
for
capital?
equipment and working capital. And then, of course, just the few ones that are out that are going to build and want something specific, then it's the larger loans that are looking for the price of the land as well as building, and then all the equipment and supplies and everything else that go with it.
So these clients that you work with, when they go to wherever they go for initial funding, do they ever come back and tell you what the issue was, why they were denied, or why it didn't happen?
Some have come back and let us know. Not all of them do.
What are some of the, I'm assuming some of the common issues is they have some debt to income issue or some credit score issue or something that affects
Some of them
education?
have credit score issues. Some of them it's the debt ratio, and then others it's because the bank simply weren't interested in that particular field that they were trying to open a business in.
Any other questions?
I'm just have a question. I just got a comment. You know, we really pushed prior to pandemic. Are we really trying to help a lot of minority businesses? It just seems like something's not working. So I'm scratching my head from that standpoint. It's just a comment, not necessarily a ODC issue. It's just a comment that I have. So
Maybe we need to dwell into it more.
Well, and what we could do, we could ask SBDC, we could ask the Black Chamber, we could ask certainly the Otis Chamber for, to keep some kind of information, compile some information that says, and they obviously can redact who it is, we don't have to have any details with that regard, but, this type of a business looking for this kind of loan and amount and the reason that it was denied, and maybe we could start putting together some kind of a pattern. That would be helpful to us to, maybe there's a program we could tailor to help small businesses.
I'll let Tyler know. See what we can do.
Great. Anything else for Kathleen? Thank you. James?
We're handing out some invitations for our annual meeting because I've decided that email is about as effective as the U.S. Post Office at this point. So we're just going to make sure we cover our bases there. October 26th will be our annual meeting. It'll be a luncheon that day from 11:30 to 1. The keynote speaker will be Dr. Perryman, who will be providing his updated economic impact of the Permian Basin report. So just as a note, free lunch and some good materials. So there you go. We want to be sure to share all of that with you. We did have a couple of meetings over the course of this last month in relation to Luke 3:38 And I think I talked about this a little bit in the past, talking to some of those larger landowners out there about maybe trying to donate larger swaths of right-of-way. As we talked about before, one of the big impetus or problems moving forward with Loop 338 is because currently the footprint isn't large enough. So all of those projects, whether it's an overpass or building out main lanes, all of those things will require additional right-of-way. And that's not an issue that we had in Midland. That's why the Midland part went faster. And essentially that's going to add 2 to 3 years to every one of those individual projects along the way. And so our hope was if you could acquire big swaths of right-of-way there, you clear out and save a lot of time on the overall development. The landowners we've talked to have been very, very receptive to the idea of donating right-of-way. The big problem came in having the discussion with the Texas Department of Transportation, who agreed that it was a good idea. And I think that may be the first time in the 20 years that I've been here that the Texas Department of Transportation has said that anything I brought forward was a good idea. So it's kind of a landmark day there. But we'll be moving forward with that and putting together that larger meeting with TxDOT. We'll be including the city, ODC, and some others in this because you have several projects on Loop 338 that are leveraged in. So this will also help in that regard because the city or the county, depending on where those individual projects are liable for 10% of the right-of-way and utility cost on all those. So every time you acquire that right-of-way, and our hope is that we can develop some methodology. My guess is TxDOT's not going to want to hold those donations, but maybe we can do that either with the city or what have you, the county, to hold that, and that may offset some of your long-term liabilities for those right-of-way and utility adjustment costs. So. But again, we were very, very pleased with how those discussions have gone. Now we're going to get everybody in the room and see how it continues and progresses. But again, we think that'll be a big thing going forward. The other thing, we did meet with a PhD student from Texas A&M University, who's a PhD student in engineering, whose specialty is drainage issues, and we're working with him and going to be working with all our different entities here, Midland County, Ector County, both cities. A little bit of Martin County will play into that as well. Looking, as well as TxDOT, looking at some drainage issues out here. We have a lot of different drainage specifications. We have a lot of different drainage details out there, but particularly with the program that's taking place on the interstate and the rebuild there, I think you'll see some changes in particularly South Ector County and South Midland County. So he's wanting to do his dissertation on that. We kind of see that as a free public service to loop together a lot of things and maybe in a very helpful way as we move forward. And that's not one of our normal Motran things. Don't worry, we don't want to get in the drainage business. We just couldn't find anybody else that would host a meeting about drainage with a group of engineers. So we'll work on that. But I think that'll be ultimately that may be helpful. That's my report.
Any questions, comments for Ken? Thank you, James. Cindy?
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
Presenting the financial statements for August of '22. With total assets of $67.6 million. We had accounts payable of about $111,000. We mentioned at the last meeting, we talked about the remaining business challenge monies. We did get a request towards the end of September, so we paid out an additional $28,000 of that in September. It's not reflected here, but just letting you know. And then we're cutting that off as per the board's choice last meeting. Our fund balance reserved $29.9 million, assigned for TxDOT $9 million, a little bit left in the workforce infrastructure for those outstanding $70,000. So that leaves you unreserved of about $28.5 million. On the next page, the income statement. Basically, year to date, we have $11.4 million in revenues. We've only spent just at $2 million. There will be some accruals before the end of the year for some of the incentives. Those compliance reports are being worked on as we speak. A big one is what we'll look at today in Nacera. We also have UTPBs and a couple of others that should be paying out and will be accrued back to September. Our sales tax for the fiscal year, we reported to y'all the last meeting. I just wanted to reiterate that. Our total was $12,123,397 over a budget of $9,000,005, so we were to the good $2.6 million. For October, sales tax to ODC was $1.144,323. Our budgeted amount is $864,424, so we were to the good about $280,000 for the month of October. Over on to the investment summary. We did have some municipal bonds that matured, and those were placed into the Frost money market account. We had some interest revenues recorded off of that, and then our expenditures do have, we did pay out for prepaid insurance. We pay that in August. That runs from August to August. So we had paid the whole bill in August, but we put 11 months of that into prepaids. That's listed on the front of your financial statements. So you had that, and we also had about $28,700 that was in accounts payable at the end of the year. Okay. Wasn't a lot of change in the investment portfolio. We talked about 3 of those matured. We did not purchase anything in August. We have made some purchases since August. I don't remember if it was late September or early October. So I'll answer any questions.
Any questions for Cindy?
Motion to accept the financial report as presented. Second.
A motion and a second to accept the financial report as presented. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion
Thank you.
passes. Thank you, Cindy. Looking for Jefferson.
He's not here.
Tracy, you gonna do Jefferson's work?
Yes. Don't mind doing this one. Yes, and I made several phone calls trying to get a compliance committee member to come and present this to you guys today, and they were all busy. So, anyways, the compliance committee just recently met and reviewed the application and all the information submitted by Border State Industries for an expansion project that they are doing here in Odessa. This company has been in business since 1952. They have several branches over 25 different states and employ over 2,400 workers. Locally, they have a 35 full-time employees at the site that they're in right now. And they plan to build a new 30,000 square foot facility with a capital investment of $12 million and add 10 new employees. You have this form in your packet. The 35 retained employees is an annual salary of $1.865 million, and the 10 new employees will be at $510,000 annually. So that's going to be a total payroll of $2.375 million. And the recommendation from the compliance committee was to fund them a 60% of the I just totally lost my train of thought. Anyways, they're funding it at 60% because it's a diversification project. It's not all dependent on oil and gas. It's a distribution center. So the recommendation was to fund $970,000 or $970,660 paid out over a 5-year period in equal payments of $194,000 per year. And that was the recommendation from the compliance committee. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? Comments? I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second to approve the grant request as presented. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Tracy. All right, Cindy. FMC.
This agenda item is to look at the compliance report from Weaver on FMC Technologies. This is for the period January 1, 21 through December 21. Put you to page 3. So they looked to make sure that the certificate of liability insurance was in place. They had no findings there. Procedures performed. They obtained and reviewed a listing of FMC technology employees for the compliance period to identify employees raised in Odessa who resided in Odessa, not raised, resided in Odessa. A stipulation of the EDA. Using the data from the reports, they calculated the number of FMC full-time equivalents, Odessa jobs, and verified whether the grantee met the 57 FTE requirement. They also, this information to determine the total payment amount was at least $3.95270 as per the EDA. They reconciled the reports to the TWSC and reports. And there's the description of the FTEs. It's at one of our standards at 1,820 hours. So the results, no findings were identified. They give the total hours at 114,375, total wages at 4,448,671. FTEs at 63, so they exceeded the requirements. They did look at an individual calculation of an employee, had no problems there. They looked at the different payment codes. They had 28 different payment codes, of which 17 were questionable about whether it fell under the payment codes for what we determined as wages, but without those, it would not have made a significant difference to the amount, so it would not have impacted the results of their work. And that is their report, and I believe you have the EDA attached as well. So we would answer any questions you might have.
This the final or the next to the last payment?
This is
The final payment.
How much is the final? See much what we
I remember.
biggest.
I believe it's the last
I
payment.
think, let me
Yeah,
I think I read
It
that.
is.
Yeah, I read it somewhere too.
Yes, this is their final payment. Thank
Any other questions for Cindy?
Yes, did this go to compliance committee?
you. No, we do not. Typically, they don't go to compliance committee unless there's a finding.
Okay.
And that's been the practice.
Who made that, when did that change? I know that changed and we talked about it in here. That there was discussion that,
I think it had to do with engaging Weaver. Because before, we had the compliance committee working with city staff in order to do those reviews. And then we determined that the bulk of that work's going to be done by Weaver. If there's no findings, it didn't make any sense to convene the compliance committee.
Yeah, it seemed like some time ago, it was a timing issue as well, because we were late getting
people
payments
who
out
were
and so forth.
entitled to payments were delayed greatly because we had to line up a compliance meeting. But I remember discussing it in one of these meetings as to whether or not routine.
It
Audits
changed
done.
in February of 20,
Thank you.
resolution, ODC Resolution 2020-02. And section 3 of that says that if there's no findings, then it comes straight before the board.
I remember that it was fairly recent, yes, last couple of years.
Yeah.
So under findings, just discrepancies, is that what they're talking about?
Or failures to meet the requirements of the contract.
Okay.
Well, and I think I would also include, you remember the issue that we had with the one company that, you know, that they just didn't match up. They were having a hard time matching up with their payroll reports and whatnot. That would be, probably actually be more in line with that.
Yeah, but that wasn't found by Weaver or anything like that. I mean, we've had one, the reason why I'm asking is we've had stuff that's gone to compliance committee, and compliance has found stuff in there also, even after Weaver's looked at it. So,
I don't think so.
Wouldn't have been in the, I mean,
Not in the last couple of years.
okay. I would still like for compliance committee to have a look at these.
Well, I'm really shocked at that.
I bet you are. Yeah, I've been a critic of
What the
compliance committee in the past.
discussion was back
Yeah,
in
one time you
2020.
called for us to eliminate it, so I'm trying to figure it out.
Where are you coming from?
Because,
Well, where I'm coming from is,
is there not, where the
this all
dates
came
on it?
from
Oh, we-
not too long ago when a couple of board members sat down after Weaver had done their report, and we found multiple errors in Weaver's report. And right now, we're still looking at whether or not we're going to change our accounting firm to begin with. So especially in this time period where we're trying to do that, I'd like to have another set of eyes on it,
Well, if you.
even if it is compliance.
Okay, but if you remember, we changed the scope of work for Weaver. That's what came of that, is that there were some things that they weren't charged with as far as looking at it. And I think we changed the scope of work for them to resolve that issue.
But the issues that came up were inside their scope of work. We didn't change them.
No, they weren't. They weren't looking at that kind of detail. That was the whole gist of that, is that there was detail that they weren't looking at because it was their scope of work. We changed that and asked them to do more detailed work, and that's what they've been doing recently.
Sure it was. Even in the scope of the work with the contract was to verify exactly what the payroll was. The payroll at that time spelled out exactly what was to be considered payroll. They allowed a number of those to come through. Granted, I said they caught quite a few of them here, which is fantastic. I'm glad to see. The scope of work was to verify, not verify whether or not the owner compensation was in there. We had multiple issues that were actually spelled out in the contract that they listed. So it wasn't the scope of work because it was listed in the contract for them to verify.
No.
It can be discussed because it's in relation to the FMC compliance.
Okay, but you'd like to see in the future every one of these go to compliance?
For now, yes.
Okay.
Until we've decided what we're going to do with our
Okay.
rights and covenants.
Can we note that for the agenda next month?
Yep.
To
Yep.
discuss that?
Yep.
So,
Changing
Changing
what we did
our
back
procedure?
in February.
well, I would like to see like FMC go back.
Any other comments on that? I think we've got plenty of good information here. I think this is a pretty straightforward report. I don't think there's any reason to do that.
I'll make a motion.
I would entertain a motion
I'll make a
to
motion.
approve.
To approve.
The payout?
Approve the
I'll make a
payout.
motion.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion, comments, questions? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion passes. So, Natasha, would you note for next meeting that we'll have that discussion?
Yes, sir. And we'll send out that resolution.
Gotta get back in, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, next item, Ms. Sarah. Oh, before we start this discussion, there are a couple of, there's a typo in the resolution, isn't there? A couple of typos in the resolution. Let me go back. there it is. Okay, it says in the fifth paragraph down, this is whereas company fell short of the capital investment requirement of $1 million, and that should be $100 million. Expending only $99,578,400. The first page of the resolution.
Turn this, Sarah.
102, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. My iPad doesn't show that. And then, let's see, it says in section 4, which is on the same page, first annual incentive payment in the amount of $1,911,600. If you do the calculation, it should be $1,991,600. That's 98.5%. 99.58% is how much that they spent relative to 100%. So, Cindy, go ahead.
Okay. So, we have before you the report from Weaver. As directed under their consulting agreement between ODC and Weaver, they're to work under the direction of the assistant city manager as to the procedures if they're not outlined in the EDA or if there's questions in the EDA. So I will tell you that I've worked with them a lot on what procedures needed to be performed. So let me talk about that as we go through the compliance report. So this is very different from what we're normally asking them to look at. When you talk about investment with most of our grants that we've given out, it's for the purchase of a building, or it's to expand, or to buy equipment, or we're doing something with UTPD for students. And so this was very different in that it's an expenditure of $100 million towards this project of creating this gas plant. So I think that was, some of the difficulty that Weaver was questioning in their procedures. So they received information from Nacero that was probably about this thick if you printed it out. It was all the transactions of the expenditures. And so those were taken and a sample was selected. As you can imagine, it would be very costly for them to look at every transaction. So they basically took the top dollar transactions and did everything over $200,000 to verify to invoices or payroll or whatever it was. So just so you know that right off the front. So when we look at the report, it's going to give you a percentage of what they verified, okay? And so they got the information from Nacero. They selected the ones they were going to get back, they wanted to look at, over 200,000. Nacero got information back to them supporting those expenditures, okay? Some of these included payroll. And so within that realm, there were certain employees within Nacero that were working 100% towards this project. Some may have been 70%, 50%, some may have been 0%. And so that percentage was looked at each quarter by the higher ups as to how they should make that allocation. So I requested that Weaver go back in and get verification of a payroll for selected individuals. I think there's around 50. It varies somewhere between 48 and 52 employees. And to look to see that, to verify those employees were making that amount of money. Okay, so let's talk through. So they did look at certificate of liability insurance. I'm looking at Exhibit A. They discussed the procedures performed. We're talking here about the $200,000, looking at payroll, And so on the last page is this page, which if y'all could look at that with me, these are the categories of expenditures that were turned in by Nacero, along with their request for payment in W-9. And Weaver has shown you what they tested within each of these categories and given you a percentage. So of the $99,578,400 that was turned in, they tested $76,942,000 or 77.3%. During that process, they noted that these expenditures covered a period of time, okay? And so I asked them to put that in the second table that is in your deal that shows how that money was spent. And this is based on a yearly amount, July through June 30th. I think we signed the contract June 21st or 2nd, something like that. So we just went to the end of the month to make things simpler. And so per review of the general ledger detail provided and the invoice support, the company has not met the year one requirement of $100 million. The total amount was $99,578,400, which represents 99.58%. So that is their report. In the EDA agreement, of which was attached to y'all's agenda packet, what happens if the $100 million is not met is laid out in section 3.1 incentives. If company does not reach investment benchmark in any year during the first 5-year term, the incentive payment for that year shall be prorated based on the total percentage that the actual investment provided by company in such year to the investment required by this agreement. Okay. They did submit, so there's things they have to submit to us. They did submit the request for payment, and they did submit a W-9 tax ID. One of the things that is not in Weaver's compliance report, but is obviously important for y'all to know, is I have copies of the option agreement that they have with Betty Moss Dean and Betty Moss Dean FLP for 1,869 acres, and the remaining 666 acres is I have a purchase statement between them and Odessa Industrial or Grow Odessa. So they have met that qualifies under the investment part of the contract. It states that they will agrees to own or lease and cause improvements to be constructed on properties that Nacero has options to purchase within 1 year of the effective date. These properties totaling 2,530 acres are described in Exhibit A. So I just wanted, it was attached to the exhibit, but we didn't have proof that that's in place. There's probably discussion that needs to be held. I will tell you that this has not gone to the compliance committee. Depending how you interpret the contract, it says you prorate it. They turned in an amount. We've given you the information as far as when those expenditures occurred and in what categories they occurred in. They did the work to verify those expenditures, and so I think it's to be brought to the board for discussion and what we proceed with from this point.
Any questions for Cindy?
Cindy, year one, can you describe year one?
Well, yeah, year one.
We have 18, 19, 20, but I think this began in 21, so.
It did.
Could go back and find it, but I thought.
right? You know, it says that they will, and cause improvements to be constructed on the properties to purchase within 1 year of the effective date. So does that mean they couldn't have done it before 1 year within the effective date? I don't know. I think that's an interpretation for the board. And
Yeah.
I, as the City of Odessa employee, will follow whatever the board tells me to do.
Did the compliance committee author that?
Did they author the contract?
Yeah.
I don't think Compliance Committee authors the contract.
No.
But this is a contract adopted by this board, I will tell you that.
Right.
And it was adopted on,
June 21st of 2021.
yes,
And it was a
I do
contract,
have the minutes.
and that's the contract we wrote.
Yes,
It was
it was
generated
written by, yes.
Okay.
So your question about year one?
Year one, although it said year one compliance was the $2 million for year one.
Right.
And year one being 21 to 22, the mid-periods of the year, from the inception till now, but all those other costs, 18 and 19 and 20.
Yeah, I mean, the way I would interpret the contract would be any expenditures by end of year one would qualify. And here's my logic on that.
It has a beginning period though.
Well,
Where?
yeah,
Nominated.
well, let me explain, Larry, what my logic is. And we've had this, I'm sure, had this occur before. If you had a company that was interested in a piece of property and they were intending to apply for a grant,
Right.
there's a likelihood, because their information would become public,
Right.
that they may try to purchase that property prior to execution of the agreement
Right.
in order to keep them from seeing a competitive disadvantage.
Yes.
So if that's the case, and that's part of their investment, then why would you disallow that when truly that is a part of it? If they spend $500,000 or $1 million or whatever. So, in my opinion, the expenses that they put together that are specifically for this project, prior to that, are intended to fulfill at the end of construction the project that they're looking for.
I see that to test that though on Weaver, they said land option $35,000 and 0% no allowance for it. Maybe that's a negative 35. I don't.
It is, and that is, they had some previous land options that they had paid more for, that they let go, and then they bought this option, and so it was at a cheaper cost.
Okay, I was wondering why it's got brackets and 0%
And-
allowance. I mean, it's a negative number.
I'm sorry, I didn't announce that. The Nacero is represented here today, so if y'all have any questions for them.
I still have a problem with that. These expenses are from 18, 19, 20, 21, and I see your example as far as purchasing land. But land is an asset that we can capitalize. Here you've got logistics, you've got engineering and design, you got technology fees, you got travel, we've got payroll, which we've never capitalized, you got miscellaneous. I mean, personally, I think that this compliance report from Weaver is fraught with, as you put it, discrepancies. So I'm really curious as to why this one didn't get a compliance committee. But all of that I can't see as being capitalized. We've never capitalized payroll in the past. Payroll's been payroll. Payroll will come up in years 6 through 10.
But if this is payroll in order to complete the design, it's part of the design cost.
No, it's not.
Sure, certainly.
Payroll's payroll. So have we had companies in the past that they categorized their payroll for a land purchase or a building purchase?
No, but may I intervene for just a minute? There are accounting standards, and don't ask me to quote you which one, I don't have it with me. There are accounting standards when you're developing a new process, which this is, okay? and you are creating a new type of facility, then costs that you incur for that, to make that happen, to design it, to do all of those things are capitalizable costs, including payroll.
So what I mean by that capitalized, so at some point when they do that, it's going to show up on the tax rolls.
Yes, it should. I mean, as a value, I mean, I understand the question, Chris, and that's a matter, I guess, for the appraisal district to determine. I can tell you that the company's going to capitalize it. I mean, you can, Jesse is their accountant that we have been working
Chief
with.
Financial Officer is here.
And, but whether or not the appraisal district considers that value, I'm not sure.
Well, the other concern that I have is that, first of all, I'm looking forward to this project. This project will be fabulous for us. But we're giving a capitalization grant for a company. We haven't even had a groundbreaking yet. We've had several things that have come up that keep pushing this project out and out and out and out. It's reminding me of another project we've had in the past that didn't come to fruition. I'm really hoping this one's going to. But at the same time that this was going on, Sarah was looking at projects in Arizona. We were looking at projects in Pennsylvania. And so, I mean, are we sure? I mean, I don't see anything in here. I would have asked these questions in compliance if we'd had the opportunity. But are we sure that all of these expenses are 100% attributable to Penwell and not to the other projects? There are just a lot of questions here in this. I mean, we can ask, and if I'm in their position, I'm going to say absolutely. But without, having Weaver's capability to sit down.
Wasn't that the purpose of what Weaver did? Weaver went in and specifically looked at expenses assigned to
Related
this.
to the Penwell project.
To Penwell, right?
Well, we verified 3.5% of travel. We verified 7.8% of surveying and permitting. We verified 8.3% of legal. You got one big category for almost $200,000 for miscellaneous. We verified 5%. No offense, but for what we're paying Weaver, I would think we would do a little better verification than that. But with that being said, this should have gone through compliance committee, and it should have been vetted.
Would these tests be conformed to standard audit procedures?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they would be verifying invoices that supported the general ledger detail given to us
But
by
they're
the
not-
state.
typically in an audit, they're not going to look at every expense, every transaction.
In
It's
an
not gonna
audit,
do it.
it's never looked at at
They
100.
stated they wouldn't go under 200,000, and what Chris is talking about is 189,000, so they didn't even look at it.
Right.
So let me ask a question, because I don't know anything about land purchase or whatever. I see where we've got land purchase options. So at this point, if this project was not to go through, would Ms. Sherrill have to turn around and sell this land? Do they truly own it, or do they have an option to purchase it?
They have an option to purchase the 1,869 acres. They own the 664, 666
And
acres.
land options are, you can capitalize those. Options.
Well, I mean, it's an option that has, I mean, the payout, the expiration of the option is September 30th, 2023, so 1 year away is when the option goes away.
That's good. Thank you. You guys have answered my question.
Okay. Would y'all like for Nacero to come up? Do y'all have any questions for them, or do you want to hear anything from them?
No.
I had a question.
Okay.
Sarah,
Okay. Y'all want to come on in?
how has there ever been a stone turned over out there that somebody could go visibly see? I mean, if the public went to that site and they said, what's going on, is there anything they could see to know that the progress has been made, that there might be benefits coming from the money expenditure?
Absolutely. We've done surveying out there. You can see survey stakes. We've done environmental assessments on the ground. Not a phase 2 yet, but a phase 1 we did. We had people walking the site.
Yeah. But you don't know if there's any visible sign that if somebody public went out there to look, that they could see anything but survey stakes?
No, we haven't turned any dirt.
Yeah.
We have looked for environmental contamination.
Right.
So we spotted and identified those points with stakes, so we can go back when we do a phase 2 and clear that up, yes.
And so, one other question is, what city would you say is the greatest benefactor of the payroll that we're 14 million payroll? Where would you say, what city benefits from that payroll that we're assisting in getting paid?
It's going to be the city of Odessa.
That on payroll?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because all of that payroll that went to engineering to design the facility that will
But
be
the
built.
people live here. Is it being spent here? Is the resident?
It's part of the capital expenditure to design the project.
It's what's going to go on the tax rolls. That's what he's saying. Eventually it goes on the tax rolls.
Right.
That's what we're trying to talk about with the capitalization.
Right.
All of these expenditures are capitalized. So they will roll into the, let's just use the number, $7.5 billion that goes on the tax roll.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering if there was anything the public could see that the money was already coming back in here. I mean, obviously Houston and some other places have most of the employees, but here, you know, physical employees other than Wes, and I didn't know who else might be here, but it's a lot of money, and I think the public might be a public sign that something has actually happened here, so it doesn't look like Summit.
Some of those contracts that were part of that audit process were for local contractors here. So there is activity that has been done with engineering survey firms here locally that is part of that audit process. So there is evidence there.
And the payroll requirements are after the 5th year. Once they get up and rolling out.
Yeah, and that was my question about when is year 1, because it's over, that's been over a 5-year period.
I'd like to introduce Jessie Wong. She's been with the company over 2 years. She was controller of the company. We recently got a change, and she's now CFO of the company. She has an audit background and was very involved in this process with Weaver and Cindy here. So very detailed. She knows auditing. That's her background. That's her knowledge. So we're confident of the numbers and the way we present them. And capitalization. It's standard auditing principles.
How, let me ask this question, and you don't have to give me a number, but did you have material expenses over and above this that are not in here, that you didn't isolate to the Penwell project?
Absolutely. We've done zero design development on any other site in the country. So anything that we did on the prior job when we were looking first at Arizona, that was not part of this documentation. We pulled all of that out. There's probably another 30 or 40 million dollars of stuff that we pulled out and didn't put in that process.
And if I may add, that was also part of Weaver's testing. They actually wanted to see the full population before we filtered it out and give them the population of what we had capitalized related to payroll.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I'd just like to say, I look forward to funding this project. I really do. I think we've got the cart before the horse a little bit here. I would like to feel better about having making sure we've really got a viable project. This is me, and I know my opinion, and $5 won't buy coffee at Starbucks. But I would rather see more of a tangible capital investment before we fund this. So.
I would entertain a motion to approve.
So move. Second.
Have a motion to approve the grant request as presented. Any other questions, comments, discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Motion passes. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Al.
Thank you to the board. We really appreciate the support.
Okay, Cindy, you're still there.
I'm still here. You are going to get really tired of me today.
Never.
This agenda item is just approval of the ODC contract for audit. It is with Weaver. This is the independent audit contract. The city approved their contract with Weaver on Tuesday night. The fee was increased by $1,000. They went from 24 to 25. And one of the reasons that we talked to the city about continuing on with Weaver is we are still doing some transferring into the new financial system with Munis. During the fiscal year they're going to be auditing. It really doesn't impact ODC, but it did impact the city. We moved all the billing and collection into the new system, and so it's always wise that you use your auditors that used to your old system to watch the transferring to your new system and make sure everything works well. And so that is why we have continued with Weaver. Just need approval.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Do you want to answer my question before I ask it?
Go ahead.
So when we put Weaver out for an FMP, I was under the understanding that we were putting all of the auditing for ODC out for
That was not my understanding. My understanding that it was the compliance work only.
And even still, the response that we got on there's nobody else that could do our financial audit that responded. That was qualified to do what's required for our
The
public
proposals that we
entity.
received were only associated with the compliance review.
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. The motion, Chris. Second from Tim. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
I'll vote aye. So motion passes. Discuss recommendation of compliance committee consultant.
I'm still here. So, under direction from the board last meeting, we wanted to select one of our previous compliance reports and get that information to Axiom Capital Partners. And I'm not saying who that grantee is. Based on their request, we had to request their permission to give their information to someone else. They know that we're under contract with Weaver, so they didn't ever question that. And so when we sent the information, we made sure everything was redacted as to names, addresses, employee names, everything. This was sent to Axiom on, I talked to him on about 9/20 about what he actually needed. He said that we could just submit everything to him in PDF form. So I submitted that to him on 9/23, that was a Friday. That morning, I called him on Monday the 26th to make sure he could that he received the email and he could open all the attachments because there was quite a few. And he assured me he could. He would be starting on it on the 28th of September. I've not heard from him. I called yesterday 3 different times, morning, right after lunch, and late afternoon. I get no answer. I cannot leave a message. His voicemail is full. I did leave a SMF notification, and I called today right before lunch. I still did not get an answer and could not leave a voicemail. So I do not have anything to report to y'all from Axiom.
I guess the only comment I would add is it would give you a little bit of concern with regard to being responsive to quickly as we would like in order to process these request payment, so I guess we'll wait to see if we hear anything at all. What's an SMF notification?
That's a good question. It just said, is this your phone number? So I said, yes, it was.
So it's something I don't really need to know about.
I don't know.
It might be over your head.
It probably is.
It was over mine, David, so that's okay. Weaver had asked us, since their contract ended September 30th, we discussed at that time that they would complete any compliance reviews that they have started. They have started on, we did FMC today and Acero. Glazers is not, the information is not in yet, so they have not started that one. Select Energy has been started. They are being non-responsive. I've reached out to them twice and have not gotten a return phone call either.
Select is being non-responsive?
UTPB is got their information in and they're working on UTPB. Cage should be wrapping up shortly, as would Apergy.
What are our options if we don't hear anything back from Axiom and we don't have anybody else that's bid on the...
No one else turned in an RFP, no.
Can we put it back out for, I mean, what do we do at this point to try to get some additional responses?
We could put it back out. I mean, we called all the local ones and they either didn't respond, didn't have time, or didn't want to do governmental.
Is the contract that we're going to execute a one-year contract?
I did not bring their contract back up since we have RFPs out. We have to either reject all the RFPs or choose Weaver and negotiate a contract with them. That's the process with an RFP.
I don't know why we wouldn't negotiate that, and then maybe as all this financial turmoil smooths out over time, if it does, over the next year or something, then I wouldn't mind revisiting it at all. Particularly I don't think we ought to do anything till we discuss at the next meeting our compliance review process.
Okay, I don't believe they have reached out to Glazers yet to get their information. So you want me to have them hold off on that one, or do you want to go forward?
I'm sorry.
We approved executing an agreement.
No, what we just approved was the audit agreement.
Yeah, that's what.
That's a different
For
agreement.
our financial.
That's for our financials.
Yeah.
Not for our...
But the question I have is, if we push it out, does that push out Glazer's date of payment?
Glazers
What
typically
do they do?
doesn't send us until when, Tina? November? They're generally November before what's their time frame? Do you have that? She may not. I don't have it in front of me either. We typically they typically don't send their information in until November. For some reason, I think they may be August or September period.
Wasn't our agreement when they were here, just they were going to continue on the current agreement for the next few months to give us time to look at this?
I thought that was the case. So theoretically, whatever falls within this time period, I would just recommend they continue to do.
Okay. Okay. So anything they've started, we would continue on. Okay. Is that the direction, everybody? Yes. Okay. I'm going to sit down now.
You're up.
I'm not up.
I think Tim's up.
Tim's up.
Marketing contractor committee.
Oh, we did the last interview on Tuesday. In my committee, we have a pretty good idea where we're going, but we want to get a chance to talk to the rest of the board, and we'll have a report to our next meeting.
How do you want to do that? Well, do we need to ask him to schedule
put us
an
on.
executive committee, or, executive session? How do we do that?
To qualify.
It's economic
Yeah,
development,
it's a
so
contract negotiation.
Yes.
So, yeah.
that would be the only way if you don't do it in an open meeting, if you don't have a discussion in an open meeting.
However y'all want to do it.
I'm good. What's the committee prefer? You guys doing the work.
I just say, can we go to the next meeting, go in executive, put it on to go in executive meeting to discuss that, the contract, and come right back out? It won't take long.
And we'll review it just to make sure that it's one of the things that will fit in the executive
Okay.
session and go from there.
Yeah.
It should.
Okay.
Yeah, on the contract.
Great.
It's listed.
So, okay, committee? Okay.
All right. Partnership did not meet. When is our
Renee, what is the partnership? Is that still going on?
yes, but it's
We
November.
did gather the most popular date and time for everyone, so it's just a matter of setting that up.
But is
I don't
it this
think
month or
we've met
next month? We were going to do it quarterly. Is it this month or next month?
Well, I think we met in July.
Okay, so we're
We're
way
gonna meet
late.
in July, and we had to cancel.
All right, I will make sure that we schedule a meeting post haste.
We need to need to schedule one. It's has to.
I do have the date and time for, I think everyone responded,
Okay.
so.
Tax Incentive Committee did not meet. Compliance, we already had our
Yeah,
presentation, but is there anything?
nothing to add.
Okay.
Advertising, we're putting up the next month.
Right. The downtown, did we have anything from downtown?
We didn't have anything to meet about this time.
We had a discussion on, like Katrina's moving out, just on the internet, about not being able to complete their contract and modifying our issues where you could go after somebody if they skip town. In this case, I think it was totally harmless and inert, so we might have to look at it some other time, but it had to be looked at globally. So I don't think there's anything of concern right now, because they actually improved that area a lot. They've got a permanent mural there, and the building looks good, it's just empty.
All right. Thank you. Before we go to citizen comments, I would like to, I want to revisit this contract with grantees, in particular the issue that came up with the Nacero compliance issue. I think we should make it very clear in our contract if there is any eligibility for expenses, capitalized expenses prior to the initiation of the contract, that those are enumerated in some way, that language is cleared up to some degree.
And find it inside the contract itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll get with Natasha and we'll start kind of working on that a little bit and clarifying what I'm looking for.
Okay.
But let's put something in the minutes that I'm going to work on that. Okay, citizen comments on non-agenda items. Are there any citizens who would like to comment on anything that wasn't on the agenda? No comments. Consider the date for the next meeting. It's scheduled for November the 10th. Is that a problem for anyone? Should be a little early to start cooking your turkey, so it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, great. So the next meeting will stand at November the 10th. With no other, you got something?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. No other business, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thanks everybody for their time.